You are saying $1 million Bitcoin. What's the logic behind that? Well, like what? And not only $1 million Bitcoin, which we all know is going to come eventually, but $1 million Bitcoin in a very, very short amount of time.
Right. So I think the key message I'm trying to get across is that the macro environment has fundamentally changed. And then I did some analysis, and other people like Macronaut and BitPain and others have also done the math too. And Bitcoin going up 20x is not a difficult thing. It's done it sometimes in the past. So the key here is that everything is different now with the ETFs, with the amount of money able to flow into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And we can very rapidly go up to 1 million. Whether we stay there or not is a different question, but just the lack of supply, because we are constrained. There's about 1.4, maybe 1.6 million BTC on exchanges right now. That's not a lot. And at some point, it's going to dry up, especially at the rate at which the ETFs are hoovering up all the coins at the moment.
Gotcha. And so I'm assuming based on that statement, you do not believe in the diminishing returns theory, because that is one of the narratives this cycle. You know, every cycle you have different narratives, right? One of the big narratives by the crowd is this idea of Bitcoin has diminishing returns. You know, I think a lot of people have PTSD from the last cycle of us not breaking 100K. I have my theories. I think it was the China ban that played a huge role in that. So I'm assuming you don't believe in the diminishing returns theory.
Not really. I mean, we talk often about hyper-Bitcoinization. And if you believe in hyper-Bitcoinization, then it's impossible to believe in diminishing returns, because there should be no cycles to Bitcoin. If you're going to reach the point of hyper-Bitcoinization whereby we replace all fiat money, then there is nothing to go back to. So what are you measuring the returns in, right? If the US dollar no longer exists, then how can you have diminishing returns? So I guess there's two parts there. One is, will there be another cycle? And I'm not really sure. Like, just because we had 3 similar looking cycles in the past does not mean that we're always going to have this cycle, right? Because it's like flipping a coin. You get heads 3 times doesn't mean the next time it's more likely you're going to get tails. It's a different equation every single time. And the other part is, well, if Bitcoin does replace fiat, then there is no diminishing returns. You're just Bitcoin now. So it's not really possible to measure returns.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think it's the things are definitely shifting, and not only in the political sphere, but also on an individual level. I think people are starting to question the old, just because, like, to be frank, like the amount of BS that has come out, you know, over the last 5 years, and just how they're the SEC, how they handled that is a great example, right? And I think people are just questioning the very what should the role of government be in my life? And I think that's good for Bitcoin. Everything's good for Bitcoin. So Samson, I don't even know how do you go about, you know, orange pilling a nation? How do you go about convincing a nation to adopt Bitcoin? I remember I did see those pictures with you and the president of Colombia. So how do you approach that?
Well, we have a lot of help. So we have this network of Jan 3 associates in all these different countries that help us open doors. And it's really just ordinary people like plebs and Bitcoiners from all walks of life that want to help, and they have a connection to somebody that might know somebody. And then eventually we work our way up through meetings and discussions, and then we get that in-person meeting, and hopefully we get some real Bitcoin strategies coming out of that. And this is what we're mainly focused on for 2024, following up on all the things that were started in 2023 and just getting that next step. But it's really encouraging, because I think with the ETFs being approved, with Bitcoin price action going up, it makes it easier, and it makes people more interested in Bitcoin. It's the Veblen effect, right? So when Bitcoin is down at 16 or 15, nobody wants it. But when it's up, then people are interested again. So we have to use that and use what's in our favor to leverage that and take advantage of that.
Absolutely. And the question I have for you, right, is, So let's say a government has a very strong fiat currency, like, like the United States, or, the European Union, or, Switzerland, for example. Um, what incentive does the government there have to adopt something like Bitcoin? Because it essentially would be a competitor to their fiat currency. And then, of course, we all know that governments all around the world love to deficit spend, love to spend money that they don't have, and they do that via money printing. So what incentive does, do these countries have to not only make Bitcoin legal tender, but even put Bitcoin on equal footing to their currencies? Because then at that point it's game over, right? It's just like you said about, Donald Trump. It's not necessarily important for him to be, advocating for Bitcoin. The market forces are going to do their thing. Just him stopping CBDCs just gives us time, right? So, what incentive how do you approach that in the first place?
Well, it's challenging, because if you have a strong fiat currency, you're not incentivized to do anything with Bitcoin unless you're able to see past the short term and understand that all fiat currencies will fail eventually. It's just a matter of time, right? And it's all relative to one another. Everything is sort of pegged to the US dollar in some way. So if the US dollar goes, and that's getting more and more likely if you look at debt and the amount that you have to pay to service that debt, it is starting to get very cumbersome. Like, they cannot keep paying hundreds of billions of dollars to service this debt that's going to keep ballooning, because just like with compound interest, well, it is compound interest, but it's compound interest on debt, which is just as powerful as compound interest on savings, right? So it's not a really good situation, I think, for the whole fiat system. And if you can see further ahead, a few steps ahead, then you would want to make a Bitcoin strategy and implement some form of Bitcoin holdings, either at the central bank or through mining. And this is what we're advising countries to do, because you can see that you're future-proofing your country against the fiat collapse. But it is challenging, and I think this is why we don't really pursue wealthy, well, quote unquote, wealthy Western nations to pursue a Bitcoin strategy. We more focus on Latin America and other countries that need Bitcoin, and they have the demand for it right now because they need money, they need to build roads and infrastructures or anything like that. So we just go where we're more needed, and we'll be opportunistic, and we'll try to work with Western countries. But it's really an uphill battle because it's so insular, and they're so unaware of the fiat money system. But there are inroads, right? So in Germany, you have Bitcoin in Bundestag, Bitcoin in Parliament, and this is an initiative that's set up to educate the politicians in the Bundestag. And I'll be going there to speak later this year, and they have a stellar lineup of all these other speakers, like Block Trainer and other guys. So we'll go and we'll try to educate the parliament and see what we can do. But it's not like we're going, not for Jan 3, we're not going to, go all in and focus on the Western countries. We'll do what we can, but the efforts, the biggest payoff for our efforts is probably in the global south, in Latin America and maybe Africa and other countries.